everything I thought about reality was just getting shattered. And so I feel like what it means to heal is to move away from fear to a state of trust and ultimately to a state of faith.
Your body is your temple. If you want good energy to stay in the body, you need to clean it. You need to purify it. You need to stop all these habits that is destroying your body, because it's a universe on its own and you are the God in a sense.
I think 14 articles have been published from that research, including an article showing an epigenetics study that showed that attending an ayahuasca retreat can actually change the genetic expression of genes associated with trauma. Is the plant's work within the consciousness level the development to ensure that the consciousness of life that we do send out is in harmony and balance with the universal consciousness of the being?
In this episode, I'm talking to Carlos, who's the founder and director of one of the biggest ayahuasca-based healing centers in Peru, called the Ayahuasca Foundation. This is part 2 of a 2-part series where we delve deep into the secrets of ayahuasca, about psychedelics, about how it opens human perception of worlds that is beyond human understanding. We talk about how shamans, shamanic tribes in Amazonas use plant medicine to communicate with spirits. It's a very interesting, very beautiful discussion regarding life, about spirituality and universe. Feel free to watch the episode till the end. And if you like this kind of content, definitely subscribe.
Your thinking kind of cracked open and you started understanding there is different worlds, different entities. What happened after that?
Well, I just, that fascination that I think was instilled by the mysteries that my father introduced me to just came full again. You know, I had felt like I was in a stagnant place, and I had felt like all of these things had been holding me down. Well, all of that, I was like liberated from all of the limitations, and there was just anything could happen now. And I had some of the most jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring experiences beyond, my wildest imagination. And I knew, like, I don't think I said yet, like in a thought, like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, but I felt it. Like, I just could not get enough of it. Like, I was so fascinated by it. But I want to point out, like, to the point that you said, you said something where you allowed ayahuasca, and I would go beyond, like, allowing, you, like, embraced it. You were like, hey, you're a guest in my home, and I fully embrace you as that guest. And that is a very, very important thing to try to understand. I kind of want to bring a little bit more focus to that, because this isn't a situation where, if you were to think of it as a chemical or a drug, that it just has a reaction. It is very, very different, in the same way that a person, when you meet another individual, or even if you just want to say an animal or another living being, doesn't just have a reaction. And it is a lot, and almost everything, to do with how you respond and how you are treating and what type of attitude and all of those things. And so that can be the difference between literally giving someone a hug or punching them in the face. It's not that there's some guaranteed response, and it does hinge on you and how welcoming you are, or how much resistance you have. That first ceremony, I had a lot of resistance, and it felt to me like a battle. I was like getting punched in the face. And the second ceremony, I was open, and that led me to a place of embrace, so that when I went into the third ceremony, I was full embrace. I was like, this is the most incredible experience that I could possibly imagine. I am so excited about this. I just want more of this. Saturate my soul, open me up, let me see what else is there, everything. I just want to know it all. And that third ceremony didn't disappoint. It was just beyond, like just into a realm where everything I thought about reality was just getting shattered. And I was loving it, because what was replacing it was a reality that was far more enticing and so much more mysterious and magical than I could have ever imagined. And in that third ceremony, I went up to sit in front of the shaman, as we did in each ceremony, and received a personal healing. And during that time, he said to me, "This is your path, and you are meant to be a healer. And if you want, you can live with me, and I will teach you."
Wow.
And I was honored, of course, to receive such an invitation. And so when I went back to my spot, I, really started thinking about that, like as a possible reality. Like, should I move here? Like, should this be my life? Like, should I live with this person and study to be a healer? And during that, I if it's okay, I'll just tell that piece of the story. It's I started thinking about my childhood. And my mother was a nurse, and my father was an inventor. And so my father had a visionary quality to him. He could see something that didn't exist and bring it into existence, as he did. And my mother was a caretaker. She took care of people and worked in a hospital. And so what does that make me? I'm like, oh, I must be a visionary caretaker. And I'm like, oh yeah, well there you go. Like that seems to make sense. And then I looked around. We're in the dark, so I couldn't see, but I knew there were this group of people in the ceremony with me. And I looked around as if I were looking at them. And I said, out of everyone here, I have the most potential to be a healer. And my arm jumped off. It was like a twitch. And my perception was, well, my arm just twitched, whatever. Let me get back to my thinking again. And then, so I kind of moved to another level. And I didn't mention this, but I had played African percussion also. And I had gotten to a place where I was playing out at clubs with a DJ when I was back in the States. And I really enjoyed performing. And I feel like that was another component of shamanism for me. As in many shamanic practices, drumming is a component to access alternate states. And I would experience that myself while playing, and sometimes witness it in the audience as well. And I had written some songs, and I learned how to sing while playing, and I had developed like some music ability. And as we didn't mention, but the ceremonies are really beautiful experiences, and the main component of the ceremony, the work of the shaman for the majority of the ceremony, is to sing. And the songs are these communications with the spirits, and they're really beautiful. So a ceremony is really like a performance. So I was thinking about that, like, oh, okay, this guy is playing a rhythmic instrument while singing in this performance, and I love to perform, and I play a rhythmic instrument, and I've learned how to sing while playing it. So I've like got that covered, like the performance element of it, like I'm already kind of got that training. And again, I looked around and thought, out of everyone here, I have the most potential to be a healer. And my arm twitched again. And it was not that long since the last twitch, such that I could notice it differently this time. I thought, that's weird. The last time it twitched was right after I had that same thought. What is it about that thought? Well, I am the son of an inventor and a nurse. Those aren't opinions. Those are facts. I am a musician that plays percussion and can sing, like, those aren't opinions, those are facts. But that I have the most potential to be a healer, that's not a fact. That's my ego. You know, that's just my ego. So that's interesting. Like, when my ego contributed to this process, my arm twitched, and then I stopped my ego. It was almost like I quieted my ego with the arm twitch and went back to objective, consideration. But then my ego came back in again, and my arm twitched again. So I thought, that's pretty interesting. Okay, well, let me just continue further. And at this time, I started thinking about the ego. And I thought, wow, the ego is interesting. I think that there was a point, which I didn't mention, where I defeated the demon of my addiction, which was appeared as a pterodactyl that I found by following a vine that was coming out of my stomach. And I was super curious as to where it would lead. And it led me out into outer space, where there was a black shiny pterodactyl attached to it, which I associated with my addiction automatically. I don't really know why, but I just knew that that was the demon that had been causing my addiction. And then I defeated it by pulling a sword out of wherever I found it and chopping it up. And there was this sense of, true conquering of my demon, I guess. And I thought back to that, and I thought, well, I think that my ego really helped me in that moment. I think it was my ego that really allowed me to believe that I could defeat this giant demon beast that was in front of me, because I had no doubt that I could. And I think that it was my ego that actually got me to believe that I was as powerful as I was. So I started to think, oh, maybe the ego's not so bad. Maybe the ego has a place, and it is to empower us. But that when we compare ourselves, that's the ego not doing what it's supposed to do. It's not supposed to say, I'm more powerful than you. It's just supposed to say, I am powerful to accomplish my goals. I can do this. And so it was this really important insight for me that I still carry today, where the role of the ego I don't view as ultimately or entirely negative. I think that it's more about how the ego plays out its role in our lives that can be positive or negative. The same way that I might have a dog, and that dog can be really helpful for me and become my best friend in my life because it loves me and is always happy to see me. And whether I had a good day or a bad day or did something good or bad, it doesn't seem to care. It just loves me regardless. But it knows I'm the master. If I had a dog that didn't know I was the master, then I might not have a good relationship with that dog. It would not be my best friend. It would probably cause me a lot of problems, and I would probably get really mad at that dog. And that was kind of my understanding of the ego. No, the ego is supposed to be your pet, and in that sense, love you and make you feel like your best self. But if you are the pet of your ego, then that's the wrong dynamics of the relationship. So I was like, wow, this is great, and insight, I'm really enjoying this. And then hilariously, I looked around and I thought, out of everyone here, I have the biggest ego. Exactly what I had just been thinking about, and that was now playing. And so boom, there's my arm, the twitch again. But the third time, it really felt like it was someone moving my arm. It wasn't yeah, go ahead.
Before I continue, I would like to, before I forget, because that's why I was writing on the side. The twitching part of your body, usually, from my point of view, is that when the plant is inside your body, it has certain ability to kind of move your, twitch certain things, make you feel in a certain way. I have seen shamans who have very deep relationship with the plant, communicating with the shaman by moving the patient's legs like, is everything activated in the body? Is everything good? Is the plant inside and working? Yes. It moves the feet, and the shaman looks at the feet and immediately understands my plant is working inside this human, and it does have certain kind of control, and so the viewers understand. It's crazy, but it is true. The plant observes one's thoughts. So once you have the plant inside and you're thinking in a certain way, it understands the kind of thoughts, and it tries to signal at times to be more conscious about your thought. But the kind of meaning that you kind of build from that point is up to you. It could be very different meanings based on who you are. But the plant has this nature of making you aware about your own thoughts, because you need to clear that level to go more into mixing with the plant. Another thing that I would like to add is about the music you mentioned. And this is also very, like in my life, it happens, and it's also very, very much into Tantra. I have understood quite recently that music is also a path to connecting with the divine. If you could focus on the rhythms, especially Icaros, even if it's online, and if you know how to connect, because from the ceremonies, from the kind of mantras you chant, the brain is kind of sensitive to certain thought patterns, and by activating that, you connect to the divine, and you have certain kind of thoughts that doesn't usually come from you. When I saw the ceremony for the first time, I was thinking, why are these people singing these beautiful songs for the whole crowd? It's only after so many years I understood they are singing for the plant, for the spirit in the room. They're not particularly playing it for you. They're playing it for the entity or the commune of the entity in the room. Very fascinating. But please, I'm sorry to stop you in between. I just wanted to create a bit more context. But the third ceremony.
Sure. Well, I would invite the consideration to replace plant with spirit in those cases, because it is a little bit more understandable. The plant, what you mean when you say that is the spirit, yes. Right? Yes, yes. And I would agree 100%. So at that point, my arm twitched again at the idea that I have the biggest ego, which was, again, my ego kind of misbehaving or, not doing what it's supposed to do, and the response. But this time, where I had thought it was my own system, like I was attributing it to my own self, like causing the twitch or moving my arm. This time it really felt like it had the previous ceremony when I felt a person's hand on my shoulder. It really felt like I was feeling a hand on someone pushing my arm. So I looked to see, is there someone? And yes, there was. There's a person standing. And immediately, like you said, I was like, oh, you've been witnessing my whole process here. You've been listening to my thoughts, and then you've been guiding me when I stray from the accuracy of those thoughts. And so I put my hand out again, and I asked who this person was. And I should say that at that time, I still thought for some reason that I should speak in Spanish. So because I was in Peru, I don't know why. So I was still speaking in Spanish. As soon as I recognized my godmother's son, we spoke in English. But for some reason, introducing myself to a new spirit, I don't know, in Peru, you speak Spanish. So I asked what his name was in Spanish, ¿Cómo te llamas? And he said in Spanish, Jesus. And at that point, I switched to English and I said, Jesus, like Jesus Christ. And he nodded. Now, I would say that I am a Christian, but I didn't go to church. It wasn't really a big part of my life. I went to church when I was very, very young, but my father decided to stop going to church maybe when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I stopped at the same time. So I wouldn't have called myself a Christian at that point, but here was Jesus Christ. So, I certainly wasn't thinking about that guy. But so he says, he nods like Jesus Christ. I shook his hand again, like a double-handed, like, really good shake. And I said, oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. And that was almost it. He went like this with his hand, with one pinky folded, and then he just kind of faded away. But again, the change had occurred. The importance of the presence had been completed. And that was that, yes, I was supposed to accept the invitation to live with this shaman and to make this my life path. And so that moment had occurred. Jesus didn't really need to be there anymore. It wasn't like he wanted to chat with me about anything else. That was the reason for me to clearly make the best decision for myself, which I felt like I did. And at that point, I chose that I would make this my life path. And I guess I could say the rest is history. I mean, of course, the story goes on and on and on.
I would like to get more out of you as well, if you have time.
Sure.
So I wanted to mention about ego, since you mentioned that. So I feel more of like there is this thinking happening back in the Vedas, or like back in the, again, I always go back to Tantric because it's a Hindu or Indian way of seeing it. All of us comes from the universe. And for a very long time as children, we are connected to the universe. It's basically universe in its purest form, experiencing material life. Then comes the emergence of hormones. And that is the way to split you from that to more materialistic life. Because one of the reasons why you kind of reincarnate is to be present in the world and do the deeds of the world. You cannot always be connected to the other world. So once the hormone comes in, desires kind of pop, you become kind of like a bit disjointed from the pure version of the universe. And then you need ego, because and that's the children kind of starts building it from early life, but it becomes stronger. You need ego because you need to be present in the material world as well. If you're always connected to the other world, you won't be capable enough to build into a society. You won't be able to work as an individual that kind of creates certain things in the world as it is present. So ego is necessary, especially when you're going. But once it is formed, it is also your duty to go back and make sure you understand ego is not completely you. It's kind of you, but you shouldn't be not mindless. Because ego also consumes a lot. All the social patterns, all the kind of rat race, all kinds of stuff. And the plant knows it. So it first steps is kind of control your ego, understand that you are just a piece of sand in an ocean, or a drop of water in an ocean. And everyone else is like you. So it makes you humble. And it's only to the humble it gives knowledge. It gives a lot of good knowledge. It teaches you everything because you're humble. So I just wanted to mention. But going back to your life after that, you have this transformational life experience. And then later in time, you started your own organization, right? I would really like to understand what was the thinking behind that? How did that came into fruition?
Sure. So again, in that timeline, that was May and June of 2003, and then I would go home. It wasn't like I just stayed there. I did go home. I still had a house, and I was living with my girlfriend. And I had a lot of loose ends, you could say, to tie up. And then about 6 months later, in January 4th of 2004, I moved to Iquitos, Peru to live with Don Juan. And and be his apprentice. And that was the most incredible experience. But it was, what could be called a traditional apprenticeship. Obviously, not traditional to have a person from another continent, fly in and live with someone. But for the most part, like, you could call it a traditional apprenticeship. And by that, I mean that it was very, very different than my educational experience growing up. There were no lectures, there were no workshops, there was no textbooks, there was no classes. It was really just me living in the house with my teacher. And what he did that day, I usually went with him, and we might collect some plants or make some remedies or make ayahuasca, and I was there and I helped him to do that. And so along the way he showed me. So I think that is really what we know to be an apprentice, and someone that like learns a craft or a trade by doing. And so that's what I did. But I, as an American, growing up in the educational system I took notes. And I used technology. So I had, at that time, a mini disc recorder. I don't even know if you know what that is, but Sony made this thing called a mini disc recorder, and that was before MP3s. Yeah, and it had this little like square cassette kind of, and you could record about an hour. And so I started recording ceremonies, and so that I could transcribe the lyrics of the Icaros. And I got a keyboard, and I wrote down the musical notation for those Icaros, the healing songs sung in ceremonies, and translated them. And then I would show them to him, like, did I get the lyrics right for this? And, is this accurate, like what you were singing in that particular time? And I wrote a lot of notes about how to prepare this remedy, how it was administered. I also had a video camera. Sony back then made a camera with infrared, so I could film in the darkness. And so I didn't film so much as spied. Like I would watch what my teacher was doing in ceremony just so I could see, because it was so dark that you normally couldn't. So I would watch him in ceremony using this infrared camera, and I did film sometimes. And so I collected all of these materials, and about 3 years in, so like in 2007, I got a 5-subject notebook, like a new big notebook, and I took all of my notes and I started compiling them and organizing them for myself. So I had like a section on the Icaros and the lyrics and the translations, and I had a section on plant remedies, and had a section on ceremonies, and had a section on all of the things that I had been learning. And when I finished, I stood back kind of admiring what I had just created. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. Like, over the last 3.5 years, I've collected a lot of information. And I imagined, what if someone gave this to me when I arrived? What if the day I arrived, they were like, here you go, you're going to want to use this, like, oh my God, how fast I would have been able to learn all this stuff, how few mistakes I would have made, like how much trouble I had in my own interpretations and all the work and energy it took me to do all this. And that was a light bulb for me. I was just like, well, I do have this now, and I bet you there's people like me that would like to come and do what I'm doing, and I could give this to them, and they would be able to accelerate their education and their abilities. And so that was really what gave birth to the Ayahuasca Foundation, was the idea that I could offer a course that could teach people what I had learned, but yet more efficiently and much more quickly. And so that's what gave birth to the Ayahuasca Foundation, was the concept of having a course, which I called the initiation course.
Would like to again give a context that it's almost, in my opinion, impossible to learn from a tribe, to trust you and teach you their knowledge. It's very hard, because over 6 years that I have met different kind of shamans, initially for many years, it's almost impossible to talk to them because they would never give away the truth about the plant, about this medicine, what it is made, because they don't trust people with this information. It's only after a very long time you build trust and they understand you are, again, humble person, good in the heart, has a quality to the soul. Let's teach him. And it's up to the plants and rest of the spirits to kind of show him the way. But to kind of think that initially when you went for 3 ceremonies and immediately the healer or the person that you are with, he understood this is your path and asked you to stay back, that is kind of, in my opinion, it's kind of unheard of. You are really meant in a sense. They immediately understood who you are, and the plants, in my opinion, have this beautiful way of communicating between humans sometimes. It goes into your body, it tries, you understands who you are, and then it goes back to the shaman and says that this person is clean, he has this curiosity, you could teach him, it is fine. So there is this underlying communication as well, which people wouldn't understand for a very long time. But then going back to the story, I just wanted people to know how hard it is. This is ancestral knowledge that existed for thousands of years, usually teach it to the student. So you build a foundation. And how was the response of the tribes, especially? How did you negotiate with them in a sense like this needs to be taught to more students? And how did it play out over the years?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit more to the story than how it might appear. So let me just fill in some of the gaps. So I came up with the idea for this course, and that would lead to what became the Ayahuasca Foundation. And originally I taught the course, but people would come. We built a guest house, and people would come and stay at the house that I lived in with my teacher. But I taught the course to them, but we would attend ceremonies led by the teacher. And by my teacher, and I mean, I call him my teacher, but the curandero or the shaman, and I wanted him to teach these students, but he didn't want to, and so I felt like we weren't sharing that same vision, and so a year later I moved out of his house, and I ended up finding Don Enrique, who is a Shipibo curandero. And when I met him, which was also a group of synchronicities that kind of brought our paths together, he loved when I told him the idea that I had. He loved it. He said, I think that I've been looking for you because that's why I'm here. The Shipibo don't live in Iquitos. They live 3 days upriver in Pucallpa, but he had moved to Iquitos so that he could find someone to teach from another country. That was a message that he had received, the plants want me to teach the Shipibo culture or tradition to people from outside of the Amazon. And here I was saying, I have an idea where people from other countries can come and learn this tradition. And he was like, that's what I want to do. So that was perfect. Then it was well, this is a match made in heaven. That's really when the Ayahuasca Foundation came to be. And so that, even though the idea came while I was living with Don Juan as a result of my own apprenticeship with him, which I will always love Don Juan. He has since passed away, but what an amazing experience it was for me to spend the time I did with him. But now I met the teacher that was the next phase of this vision, where I know it might sound weird, and I'll try to be as articulate as possible, but I really felt like this was what I was supposed to do. I wasn't just supposed to come as a foreigner and become a healer. I was supposed to come and set this up so that many, many healers could be created or taught. And so we were now on a shared vision. And he I didn't have to try to convince him. Don Enrique wanted to teach. He would like call me or come over to my house and say, hey, I have a great idea. Like, when we have the students, let's have them do this. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, like totally. So it was just super exciting to be able to work with someone who shared that vision. Now, not everyone, to answer your question, not everyone in his tribe felt that way. Now, the Shipibo tribe is a very big tribe. It's 100,000 people. Like it's not a little village, and they're spread out. So his little village, because of his role in that village, they all loved what he was doing. They are fully supportive of what he was doing. They contributed to it. They would send the medicinal plants and send the like components to teach. And partly because he was making money doing that, and he would use that money to provide for his community. But not everyone thought it should be taught to foreigners. To this day, not everyone thinks that shamanic tradition or an indigenous culture should be taught to foreigners. And I can totally understand that. Foreigners don't exactly have a great track record when working with indigenous people, so completely understandable. But thankfully, like, he and I did share that vision, and he did trust me, and I was honored to work with him, and he to this day still leads the courses. We're currently offering our 57th course. We've had over 800 students, and it's just been an unbelievable process. Now, along the way too, we built a retreat center, and so we offer 10-day retreats, 18-day retreats, and a 4-week course. And the initiation course, that was really the seed that gave birth to the Ayahuasca Foundation, is an 8-week course, and that course continues to happen. But I work with his younger brother and younger sister, and they offer the 4-week program and the shorter retreats, the 10 and 18-day retreats, and that's at a separate location. And that has turned into something amazing as well, because we have been working for the last 8 years with a research group called Onaya Science, and they've been conducting research at our retreat center, and they've published over a dozen articles. I think 14 articles have been published from that research, including an article showing epigenetics study that showed that attending an ayahuasca retreat can actually change the genetic expression of genes associated with trauma, a specific gene called sigmar-1. And now we're doing studies looking at a full spectral analysis of all the genetics, and also doing a study specific to military veterans. So next month we'll have a group of military veterans come down for the 6th time, or a different group each time, through an organization called Heroic Hearts Project. And that study is specifically looking at the treatment of PTSD. And actually that retreat will be filmed for a documentary for HBO as well. So hopefully a lot more people will be able to see that. But so far, from the research that has been gathered and analyzed, out of all the veterans that came down, they all had PTSD diagnoses. None of them left meeting the criteria for PTSD diagnosis. So 100% effectivity in improving PTSD. So really fascinating stuff. So that's been an amazing part of the process. Since the original seed was planted, this thing has grown into places that I never could have imagined.
But I think a few things I would like to add. One is the ability to plan for the planned. It's also something I understood, and not just to the planned. Once you get involved with shamanism, this kind of practices, you understand the grand extent of plans that all species are capable to make. For example, humans have plans. I'm going to do this, and there is a certain level of intelligence and energy they have to make this happen, maybe for a few years. When it comes to advanced species, for example, like plants, the level of planning that they can do is kind of like, decades or very long. So once they see potential, and once they understand this probability could play out in their favor, I feel like when we say spirits, people kind of associate with different things. For example, like with God, people in society always connect to like all this ever loving God who is caring and nice and stuff like that. It's a good way of understanding fundamentals of nurturing part of the nature, but there is also very sharp, very animalistic, very like smart planning. Especially with plants, I have understood like it's important they survive. And humans, as a younger species, going wild, doing deforestation and destroying things. And as elder brothers or sisters, it's their responsibility in a way to create more consciousness, to wake people up. So they are from their side planning in advance. The thing that you started, it's spreading, right? Now HBO is coming, they're doing a documentary, there is scientific studies happening, and the knowledge that was once fixed to a smaller group of people in one of the tribes in the Amazon is spreading around the world. So that is the plan. That's the ability to extensively plan ahead, use the right people to do the right thing. Very beautiful in a sense. And also I wanted to add about the PTSD thinking. So when I went for ayahuasca the first time, I used to drink alcohol. Not a lot, but still used to do alcohol. I used to eat junk food. And the reason why I do all that is because I was unaware about my own body to a certain extent. But when plants kick in, they really teach you exactly like, just like Indian way of thinking, your body is your temple. If you want good energy to stay in the body, you need to clean it. You need to purify it. You need to stop all these habits that is destroying your body, because it's a universe on its own and you are the God in a sense. So there is a constant, these plants really help to heal that kind of traumatic events within the body to make it pure. So they can also be an efficient intelligence that contributes society, change the world. Coming back, it has been quite a long time, right, since you have started the organization. I think it's around 19 years.
15 years
right?
since we started the Ayahuasca
15
Foundation.
years. 15 years. But it's quite a long time. And over the time you have met so many people and you have trained so many people. I would like to know a little bit a bit more into like all these years after, what is your understanding about the plant and about shamanism? I come from this point of view that keeps deepening. You understand about different levels of knowledge about energies and different intelligences. Where do you stand now?
Oh, that's an easy question. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, by the way, and thanks again for inviting me on. I feel like I have developed my perspective tremendously. My interpretations have changed numerous times. There are some core feelings I have still about fear as our greatest obstacle. In fact, I think where I stand now is that I view the healing, what the word healing means to me is synonymous with the liberation from fear. And so I feel like what it means to heal is to move away from fear to a state of trust and ultimately to a state of faith. And that's what I would say is at the core nature of spirits, or especially plant spirits. A plant exists in a consciousness of faith. A tree never doubts. It never wonders if it's growing the right way. and it just exists completely in a state of faith. And that state of faith is available to us. It is, I would call, our destiny. Like, it is where we're supposed to exist in. But we have all of these obstacles or these impurities that prevent us from remaining or achieving that state of being. And so that cleansing process, or that removal of those obstacles, is what facilitates the healing process, the same way that if you have a cut, you know that you need to clean it. You clean the wound, you don't heal it. It heals because it has no obstacles preventing it from achieving its destiny. And that, to me, on a consciousness level, is the removal of the obstacles that prevent us from achieving the state of faith. And what it feels like when you have those obstacles is to be in a state of fear. And so I guess that's really where I'm at now. You talked about some plans, and I like to have fun with that, in just, imagining what is the plan. It's kind of like, in your example of the grain of sand and the humbling of the ego, another way might be that I'm just a cell in the body of the earth. It's almost the same concept of humbling. So I accept that the cell of my eyelash probably has far less of an idea of what my plans are. Thus, I, in the metaphoric eyelash of the earth, have far less understanding of the plans of the earth. But I like to imagine that, one, that humans have a very special role, and that we're not here by accident, nor is this massive population explosion of humans in recent generations an accident. And I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I have tremendous faith in the intelligence and wisdom of the earth to know exactly what she's doing. And for that, I love a metaphor of what the reproductive system of ayahuasca is, and how that could be compared to the reproductive system of humans, and also then the imagined reproductive system of the earth herself. So ayahuasca, I don't know if you've ever seen the flower of ayahuasca, but it's a very delicate, beautiful 5-petaled flower. And after the flower has passed, it produces a seed. And that seed is kept in a container that resembles a wing, just like a maple tree. I don't know if you're familiar with maple trees, but they produce a wing that helicopters. It's an aeronautic vehicle that contains the seed, and it flies the seed like a helicopter away from the tree so that it can plant and grow in another area. And that's what ayahuasca does too. It produces this wing, this aeronautic vehicle that helicopter flies the seed to another part of the jungle. And so then I ask, well, what is the reproductive system of this living being that is the earth? What is the earth's reproductive system? Does the earth create an aeronautic vehicle that carries its seed to another part of the galaxy or the universe or the solar system? And if so, then how does the aeronautic vehicle get made? And if we look at our own human reproductive system, when a woman gets pregnant, they produce a whole new type of hormones. Some of those hormones are already there, but in small number, and the number of those hormones drastically increases. They're commonly called pregnancy hormones. And it's those hormones that actually make the baby in the womb. And if you were a cell in the body of a woman, and for generations and generations, 25 years, but in the generations of cells, thousands upon thousands of generations, everything went a certain way. And then one day, all these new beings showed up. There was a population explosion, and they all seemed to think that they were the most important thing going on, and they were disrupting everything. And they felt like they had access to all the resources of this being. And whatever they wanted to do with them, they prioritized their project over anyone else. And if they needed some calcium, they took it. And if they needed potassium, they took it. And if they needed some vitamins, they took them. Because whatever they thought they were doing, they thought it was the most important thing over everything else, even when it caused the suffering of the being, at least from the perception of these countless generations of cells that knew the normal procedure, right? So you can see where I'm going with this metaphor, right?
Yes.
Are we the pregnancy hormones of the earth? Is it our job to build the aeronautic vehicle that creates the seed of life to bring to another place within our solar system or outside of it? And is the plant's work within the consciousness level the development to ensure that the consciousness of life that we do send out is in harmony and balance with the universal consciousness of the being? And I guess that's what I enjoy playing with, and I think that gives me hope and makes me feel good about being a human, and I feel like a blessing and an honor to be a part of it.
Yes. I would like to, again, before we end, I would like to add to what you just said. I feel like blueprint to everything. The universe, the body, even the insect walking on the floor, all of those things is the same. Like you mentioned, like we are the cells of the universe, and planets are cells of something even bigger. So the information is passed in a way that it's the easiest to build. If every kind of systems have a different blueprint, it's hard. It's harder to kind of like pass, communicate, and build. So everything has similar blueprint. Whatever happens in your body, you can kind of explain it using what is happening on planet Earth. Like there is this revolution happening in France. There would be a revolution happening in your body if you don't take care of it. And that would be called a cancer or a degenerative disease. So everything is sharing similar consciousness. And the thing that you explained in the end about intelligence leaving a place and continuing, it's very beautiful. I hope people understand it in its full context. But that is how things work. Like there is certain intelligence that expands and contributes to each other and consistently trying to expand. And we are all part of it, playing our part, just like trying to understand what is above us. We are going to the final questions. What is future for you? So where are you at right now, and what do you see as future?
This year I got certified as a psychedelic assisted therapist, and I developed a program for psychedelic assisted therapists to come to the jungle and learn the ancestral tradition, but a specific program where we're not trying to teach them to become shaman. We're just trying to teach them what we feel are principles of ideologies and methodologies that would contribute to the improvement of psychedelic assisted therapy, which is clearly a field of medicine that I embrace, but also will be happening. And so my future, I hope to be influencing the development of our understanding of the potential of psychedelic assisted therapy, such that spirit is included in that understanding of the potential of psychedelic assisted therapy, and that spirit guides that healing process. And so I'm really passionate about that. I really would love to contribute to what I think is the future of medicine, where we finally include consciousness in our understanding of modern medicine by revisiting and returning to the ancestral understanding of consciousness and its importance in medicine and healing. So that's my future, or what I'm focused the most on right now.
Okay, I think we came to the end of the podcast. To anyone who's listening, and most probably they would be a bit skeptical because of this wild journey, but I would like, whoever is listening, I would like you to know that this things does exist. There is this kind of journey that is a bit outside the usual be born, work hard, get a job. I mean, that is also part of life. But there is this magical journey for people who seek. So don't completely shut yourself off. It does exist. And to Carlos, thanks a lot for all the wisdom and knowledge you give to the audience and to me. I would put links to Ayahuasca Foundation. So if anyone wants to go and experience Shipibo, authentic ayahuasca, definitely check the website out, and also check Carlos and check what is he up to and follow him. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.